Good evening, everyone, and I'd like to welcome you to the October 13th special board meeting. We're going to call this meeting to order at 6:05. At approximately 8:30, the Board of Education will determine which of the remaining agenda items can be considered and acted upon prior to 9 p.m. and may continue all other items on which additional time is required until a further meeting. All meetings are scheduled to end no later than 9 p.m. At this time, I'd ask you to join us in the pledge, and Mr. Robert Schwant will be leading us.
Thank you, Carolyn. Please stand. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schwant. Okay, and this time we're going to open public comment. As authorized by Governor Newsom's Executive Order N-2920, dated March 17, 2020, the Albert Unified School District will conduct all board meetings of the governing board via teleconference until further notice. The meetings will be conducted via Zoom. Spanish interpreter is available via Zoom platform. All meetings may also be viewed on our district YouTube channel. Click here on the day of the meeting, and all recorded will be reviewed subsequently after the meeting. Pursuant to Executive Order N-2920, the governing board will take public comment. All public comments must be submitted in writing in advance of the meeting. Please submit your written comments to superintendent@albertschools.org no later than 9 a.m. on October 13th, 2020. During the governing board meeting, written public comments received in a timely manner will be read to the governing board. Pursuant to Board Bylaw 9323, public comments public comments period will be 20 minutes. Duplicate public comments will not be read to the board. However, all public comments will be provided to the Board of Education in advance of the meeting. So at this time, I'm going to ask Dr. Kemp if we have any public comments to be read to the Board of Education.
We do. We have one.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm writing in response to the safety measures the Albert Unified School District discussed last week and how they once again display an incredible attempt that lacks serious accountability and is rife with systemic structural racism and discrimination. What proof do we have that 90% of the measures to keep our children safe are put in place in such a short amount of time? Can Albert show proof to the community? Has each of you, as members of the board, gone to your assigned schools and visited all of the classrooms to verify? My concern is that in the effort to have the district ready for a potential November 2nd opening is that things are being rushed and not tested for safety, and that people are lying about how much has actually been accomplished. The AUSD is what will ultimately be more harmful to my community than the coronavirus. It's incredibly hard to believe that air scrubbers are in 90% of the classrooms throughout the AUSD, that they have been tested, and that there have been no electrical issues in our schools. As you are all aware, most schools requiring an enormous amount of upgrades. If our air scrubbers are in fact installed properly and running, we would have heard by now a multitude of issues. Number one, electrical loads of air scrubbers and internet and other electronic equipment is too great for many classrooms, and power outages will ensure equipment will not be functioning properly. Please take a moment to seriously understand the electrical grid issues at play. For this reason, AUSD should test internet capabilities and air scrubbers in all classrooms before opening. Please do not rush these things and take your time to open until January 2021, like the Temecula Unified School District. Number two, loud factor. AUSD, has any of you actually been in a classroom with an air scrubber? I highly encourage you to do this ASAP. Sit in a classroom with an air scrubber. Have someone on Zoom connected to your classroom and see how difficult it will actually be for teachers to speak over the noise of the air scrubber and students to hear the teacher in person and students to hear via Zoom. You will quickly understand this plan to install this particular type of air scrubbers was not thought out properly. Testing needs to be done in every single classroom with a teacher present, a school board member present, and someone available via Zoom. Placement of internet, air scrubbers, cameras, and mics is a process that needs to be thought out and taken seriously. It needs time, so consider the value of time to figure these things out and open AUSD in 2021. Number three, not enough maintenance staff. No mention in your ASD safety plan does it discuss the limited resources of maintenance staff for these measures, namely, who will be taking care of air scrubber issues while teachers are teaching. The plexiglass you install will inevitably break. Things will fall apart. Installation of items will need to be looked over. Take these few months to hire more custodial staff, to hire more maintenance staff. You will need to keep up these safety measures, and it is not the responsibilities of teachers to teach and maintain these safety measures. They have enough on their plate. Take these next 2 months to safeguard our schools in a non-rushed way. Do not open AUSD until 2021. These are all examples of oversight needed by all AUSD members on the safety measures being installed. Relying on one man to report back honestly and accurately is entirely unacceptable when these are safety measures for our children. I ask you, why open before 2021? Why November 2nd? Do you understand the risk you're putting our children in, knowing full well a Thanksgiving and Christmas break happened during your proposed timeline? Has any of you read the latest study released by Princeton University researchers? They produced the largest study to date of 500,000 children and found that kids are super spreaders. This is what you're going to encounter if you push to open AUSD in November for only 2 weeks, followed by a break and then students returning for another 2 weeks. That is entirely too many breaks during a social season to encourage students and staff to maintain social distance. Please, AUSD, think about the research that has been done. Think about how rushed these safety measures are being handled. Think about how your decisions carry with them the weight of structural and institutional racism when you do not take into account the rich culture of this district. I encourage all of you on the board to take pause and open in 2021. Sincerely, Mimi Velasquez.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Kemp, and thank you, Mimi, for your comments. Are there any other comments? Dr. Kemp? Okay, thank you very much. So with that, we're going to go on to the action item. 611, take action on timeline reopening of schools for in-person instruction for students and staff in the hybrid model. And at this time, I'm going to ask for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to have discussion, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Muzzarino.
Thank you, Madam President, and members of the board and our public who are present tonight. As the board directed staff to collect the most current data to update the board and fill in some of the missing pieces from last week's discussion, particularly related to the current risk status. I am going to share my screen so that it is much easier to follow. Is everyone seeing the screen here that's in this Zoom room? Yes?
Yes, I am.
Okay, perfect. We certainly had hoped that the trend that a couple weeks ago had originally surfaced, that transitioned us from the lowest tier to a less restrictive tier, was going to continue. But unfortunately, the trend of the last 2 weeks, which is in the other direction, has indeed continued. And so unfortunately, I am reporting that today's data, you could see the new COVID case per 100,000 population is now 8.1. And that's compared to the state average, which is 6.8. The new adjusted case rate is 9.2. I'll show comparison data in a couple slides down the road, but 9.2 is the current adjusted case rate for our tier assignment. The positivity rate is now 5.9, and that's compared to 3.4 statewide. And then the newest metric, which we discussed last Thursday, which was just added, is 7.7. That's the health equity metric. So just to give some context, here are the numbers within the tiered system. Our current adjusted rate is now 9.2, which you could see is in the purple. The positivity rate now 5.9, which is still in the red, and 7.7 for the health equity metric, which is on the high end of the health equity metric. That goes from 5.3 to 8. And board, feel free if there's any questions throughout this presentation to ask at any time.
Thank you.
For a little more perspective and context, we'll take a look at the last few weeks. We currently remain in the substantial range. Our September 29th adjusted case rate was 6.7. It went up last week to 7.6. We had hoped to reverse that trend for this week, but instead it is up now to 9.2, as you could see here. On the positivity rate, excuse me. I apologize. Sorry about that. I am a little choked up. You know, these again were not the numbers we were hoping for. September 29th, we were at 4.8, went up to 5.0, and now is 5.9%. And again, the health equity metric, which is the first time that this is present, is 7.7.
Alan?
Yes, sir.
So we see the numbers going the wrong direction, going up. Is there reasons that they're giving as to what's driving the numbers to do that?
We'll talk a little bit more about that when I share the county's response, because there is a press release that I'll discuss, but it's really all about testing to ensure that they have an accurate measurement to work with. It's again a matter of behaviors, and it always comes down to people being safe, people engaging in all the best practices, and taking all the safety precautions. So whenever the numbers go in the opposite direction, typically it's a result of just behaviors, and that typically is what the county public health office discusses, which is why again they continue to encourage mask, face covering, mask wearing, social distancing, and then of course all of our establishments to maintain all of the guidance and the safety measures from the state. It's really all about human behavior.
Okay.
So the question is, at a minimum, your counties are in a tier for 3 weeks. We talked about this last week. You can't move forward until you're in 3 weeks, and last week was week 3. So then the data is reviewed, and then every Tuesday, the new data comes out. And at that point, the county either meets the criteria, and you have to do so for 2 consecutive weeks. Or if you don't, if you go the other direction, then you're assigned a more restrictive tier. So the question is, why did we not get assigned a more restrictive tier? Because we fit under this category. We worsened for 2 consecutive weeks, and significantly. Well, the reason is this, and I'm going to read this, and it's also on the screen so everybody could see it as well. But this is a press release released today from Dr. Kaiser, a Riverside County Public Health Officer. Riverside County is being allowed to remain in the red tier for at least a week after local officials requested more time to improve the metrics and avoid moving back to the most restrictive tier. That would be the purple tier that we discussed last Thursday. State officials on Tuesday announced that Riverside County would stay in the red tier during the adjudication process and see whether the county can reduce its cases per 100,000 people and meet the metrics to remain in the red tier. Riverside County officials requested delay as the county's metrics showed an increase in case and positivity rates that could push it into the more restrictive purple tier. The aim with the adjudication process is to make the case to the state that we can maintain our current status and still control COVID-19 in our communities. said Dr. Cameron Kaiser, Riverside County Public Health Officer. Whether or not we stay red or purple, or return to purple, rather, excuse me, we have to get people tested to find cases and continue to use facial coverings, social distance, and avoid gatherings. If we return to purple, we want to get back to red as quickly as we can. If we stay red, we want to progress. We can't do either of those things without individuals, businesses, and institutions working together to reduce spread. Last month, Riverside County moved from purple to red because it met the criteria for positivity and case rates. Counties are placed within the red tier because of their daily case rate, which must be lower than 7 new cases per 100,000 population, and positivity rate lower than 8%. The state adjusts the case rate higher for counties that are not meeting the state's daily average testing volume, which brought Riverside County's case rate above 7 per 100,000 last week. Here is the same news release in Spanish, and I know that this meeting is interpreted. We have all of our meetings interpreted, and hopefully that was read also to our Spanish-speaking members of our community. For some comparison, the school districts that are open are residing in our neighboring district to the west, Orange County. Riverside County does not have any public schools open. There are some districts that are considering a waiver potentially, but no one has announced plans to reopen during this fall. Orange County has a number of school districts open, though not all of them, but you could see that their case rates are considerably lower. Their adjusted case rate, their per 100,000, their positivity rate, and their health metric all considerably lower, which is why they have been able to open schools, although again, many of them have not opened yet and are planning to open over the course of the next few weeks, depending upon whether or not those numbers continue to trend positive there. San Bernardino, our other neighbor, is in the purple, which is technically where we are, although based on the adjudication process, we have a stay for 1 week, but for all intents and purposes, we are in the purple widespread tier. As you could see, their cases, 9.6, 10.3, 6.5, and 8.7 for the equity metric. So again, our neighboring districts are also being challenged as we are. And as a result, they're not opening schools. Well, as we reported last Thursday, we would reopen our thought exchange and engage our students even further in anticipation of this meeting today. And we were able to get another few hundred students to participate. You could see that 2,521 of our students have participated. They provided us 2,600 thoughts, 51,427 ratings. These are incomplete thoughts that were never finished. They never made it. And here is the word cloud. And again, as I've mentioned in the past with the Thought Exchange, this is a crowdsourcing platform that identifies key terms and anything that is mentioned over and over and over again, that's starred over and over and over again, is in bigger print, as a bigger font. So this speaks to the sentiment of any particular group that participates. So you could see the risk to family is our students' major priority. I know many of them would love to come back to school without a doubt, but they recognize the risk in our community and do not want to bring it home or do not want to get sick themselves. They want to stay safe, but they really do care about our community and want to be careful. Our parents, we had almost 4,000 participate, so we had quite a few hundred more from last week reopening. They contributed 4,600 thoughts, which means that some of these people contributed more than one thought, and 139,584 ratings, which means that these folks went through all of these thoughts. So it's wonderful to have this level of participation. And our parents, too, were very clear. Between flu season and COVID and safety, we need to wait. We still do not feel confident. We also have asked all of our staff to participate, and our staff feedback, classified, certificated, and management also have provided us with a great deal of input. Of course, all of our principals and our teachers working with our children, and well as our classified team. So obviously all the phone calls, all the information, all captures a very similar sentiment as we discussed last week. So I am proposing a new timeline. As I mentioned Thursday, we will open the window for the second semester to decide hybrid or virtual. Families know a lot more now than they did back in July about all these programs now, so I think it'll be a more informed decision, number one. Number two, we're doing it early so that we have ample time for everyone to prepare, for us to reschedule in the event we have to reschedule children that might go from one to the other, as well as give teachers plenty of time to prepare if in fact we are able, given the conditions, to move to that hybrid model. Over the summer, obviously, we had planned to open, and then it was clear that the conditions were not going to allow us to. So we moved to the model, but I think it's fair to say that everybody was really rushed towards the beginning of school to get everything done. And everyone did a wonderful job getting everything done, but certainly it was rushed. We want to make sure we have ample time this time around. The 26th is the day we do plan on still opening our learning hubs. Those are at centers around the community. Again, focusing on our children that may not have a safe place to do their schoolwork. They may be sharing homes or just not in a position where it's easy for them to access their instruction. Also, programs that serve some of our children with exceptional and extraordinary needs. Again, very, very small groups of children who we will be able to meet their needs in a very, very safe way. That's October 26th, as we've been discussing. October 30th. Yes, sir.
On the homeless and students with exceptional needs, who would be doing that teaching at the learning hubs?
Well, the learning hubs around the city, there's no teaching. It's just a place. So it's staffed by our partners for after-school extended learning, but they're simply supervising the children and providing them with support. But there's no teachers there, but the students are able to get on the internet there. And of course, it also provides them a safe environment. And if they do have questions, there are people there that are helping, much like the employees in our after-school program, but they're not teachers, or there's not instructional aides there either. It's basically our after-school program that we are doing during the day. For the students with exceptional or extraordinary needs that we're identifying, they will be on campus and in classrooms and outdoor environments with their teacher in some cases, with instructional aides and other supervisors in other cases. We're working out the details of it, but for the children that are in some of our programs that require a tremendous amount of support, they will be with everyone who is part of their support team that are written into their individual education plans. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. And then October 30, this links to the 19th. We're opening the window on the 19th. We're going to close it on the 30th. These 2 weeks of time, we expect our families to ask a lot of questions of principals, because we're going to do this through schools. If you're in the virtual program right now, it'll come from your virtual school leader with Mr. Shiflett. If you're in the hybrid program, it'll come from the school that you are assigned to. And we're going to ask you what you want to do for the second semester. Now, some of you may be saying, gosh, October 30th, it's so early for the second semester to make a decision. We recognize that. But of course, we need plenty of time to make all of the program changes that are likely if many, many families choose to go one or the other. And much like this time around, as we've discussed, prior to the actual start, we will look at cases individually. Given there are compelling reasons, I recognize that sometimes people might change their mind or have some condition in their life change, or perhaps a health issue. But for all intents and purposes, we're getting it out on the 19th, and we would like it back on the 30th, 2 weeks of asking questions and discussing it further with our school leaders. At which point everyone should have all the information necessary to make an informed decision. Then on December 16th, that's when we end the first semester. And I'm proposing that we continue the current distant learning model as we're doing it right now, right up until the end of semester. In other words, not open for hybrid in-person learning at this point, or for the remainder of the semester. January 4th is when we're scheduled to begin the second semester, and I am proposing that we begin that remotely, because January 4th, which is our scheduled calendar date to reopen, is so close to the holidays that we will not have a lot of data based on our risk status from the holidays. And the expectation is that the holidays will bring people together, as good as people are about being careful. And I would feel much safer. I know the Board of Education in kind agrees that that would be early to start without all the information, because we're off 2 weeks prior to this start. January 19th is the day after Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday and the holiday in his honor. It is at that time that I propose we begin in-person instruction for students and staff in the hybrid model, and that will be based on those who choose the hybrid model second time around. But again, that's assuming the risk status is favorable. So obviously we can't predict what it's going to be like on January 19th. However, that will give us all the information we need, and enough information to make that decision. So my expectation is that between the 4th and the 19th, we will monitor it closely, but the plan, as far as teachers planning, as far as families planning, is to begin in-person instruction on the 19th. For a little more context.
Question on the last slide,
Yes,
Alan.
yes, sir.
I don't know if you were to get to this or not, but we're looking at then the 4th of the 19th, somewhere in there. Our neighboring districts, what are they looking at, and how are we going to stack up compared to them if people start asking us?
Well, that's a great question. Hold on one second. Let me get that back up.
Okay.
Just so people could see that. Okay, it's not allowing me to show that, so I'm not going to get that back up right now. But let me address your question, Trustee Schwann. No districts in Riverside County have announced plans to reopen. Many have come out and suggested that it's likely to be in January, and a few districts further out east have already announced that it will be in January or second semester, but they too will be looking at the data at that time. Obviously, there's no way to guarantee you're going to open at that point. Riverside Unified School District has a meeting next Tuesday, and they will continue to discuss their plans. They have in discussion prior to now talked about November 9th for their elementary schools, and later in the month of November for their secondary schools. I don't want to misquote, however, so that's what I believe they're talking about. Corona as well had a meeting recently and talked about opening their elementary schools as well. But of course, so much has to do with the latest data, so I can't speak on their behalf either, but they too are looking at reopening for in-person instruction to some degree sometime either later this month or in November. But to my knowledge, there has not been any formal announcement. And of course, the data from today is also going to be taken into consideration. Now, the other question is whether or not the county being in the purple tier will require a waiver if a district makes a determination prior to us moving back to that tier. For example, we're technically in the purple tier right now, but because of the adjudication process, there's a stay for a week. Well, if a district indeed makes that determination to reopen, but yet we go back to the purple tier, what exactly does that mean? And that has not been clarified to my knowledge either. What we do know is that if a district opens up while they're in the red tier, and then the county moves back to the more restrictive purple tier, they do not have to close. They would only close if they met that 5% threshold, which means that if 5% of your total school population, littles and bigs, contract and test positive, then you would have to close that entire school. If a quarter of the schools in your district test 5% or more of all of the people on site, then you would have to close the entire district. Those are the state guidelines that remain. But if you open in red and then you move to purple, you do not automatically have to close, but the expectation is that you work very closely with Dr. Kaiser and his team, because obviously purple is widespread, and there's that fear that it's going to lead to an outbreak in the community. Remember, when you look at the schools that have opened, they're in places where there's not a lot of widespread COVID cases. So here's the latest data. Does everyone see the spreadsheet?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so these are the latest, the 58 counties, and you could see they're either in orange, yellow, red, and it's in alphabetical order. Most of the ones that are in the least restrictive tier, which is yellow, or the second least restrictive, which is orange, are places that have either been very, very proactive or they're more remote locations. And as you could see, it's a combination. There's not very many yellows, but there's some. You could see Riverside right here. These 3 asterisks means that we're in the adjudication process. So yes, we're red, but it's because it's being adjudicated. But here's our current status. And
when it says Riverside, that means the county?
That these are all counties. Yes,
okay.
These are all counties. Yeah, thank you for clarifying. All counties. So again, you could see that it's mostly red as you go through them. Lots of purples too, but certainly many districts, many counties rather, have transitioned to the red tier. But of course, also keep in mind that now there's the equity metric, the new healthy place index that is now factored in, which may or may not impact things depending upon how closely counties are working with certain communities that they serve. So again, you're looking at a state that is pretty much all over the place. 1, 2, 3, 4, all 4 levels represented, but again, most are still in a very restrictive tier. Questions? And I'm sorry to deliver this news today because I think we're all acknowledge the challenges that our families and our children face. And we know about our youngest of kiddos who are crying because they don't want to get on the screen time, or their parents are crying because they know the struggles that they're facing and all of the screen time. And we know that across the nation, upwards to 20% of kindergarten age children have not signed up for school. So the littlest of children are really facing great challenge, plus other children that they're just not learning well under this model, despite the incredible efforts that our teachers, our instructional support team, our principals, our counselors, our ELTs, all of the support folks that are doing incredible work. Dr. Kemp talked last Thursday about all of the interventions we have in place and all the things we're continually adding. But we recognize that it's going to take a gargantuan effort, which we are equal to ensure that our children that are missing in action, that are being left behind, are accounted for and served. And our principals, our school resource officers, our assistant principals are making house visits on a regular basis when a child does not come to class, or if they're maybe not showing themselves often, or if there appears to be any issues. Our counselors working so closely with our student services team. Our principals get lists of students that are not regular, and the effort that's being made to serve our kids. I know so many teachers please open our schools. We need to, but my gosh, if it's not safe, we certainly can't put our children or ourselves at risk. But we're going to continue to meet the needs of our children. But I know that there's plenty of folks out there that they want us to open our schools, and we want to open our schools. And if we could do so safely, we would. But we in no way are in not understanding the challenges that everyone faces, and wish we could fix it, because that's what we do, right? We like to fix things, and teachers like to fix things, and we're going to continue to try to fix things and continue to meet the needs of our kids as best we can in this environment. But I know that for our families, for our teachers, as I mentioned last Thursday, people need to know. They need to know what we're doing. Tell me what it is, like it or not like it. I need to know what I'm dealing with so I can move on. Our teachers could plan, our families could plan, and our children, our students as well could plan.
Alan?
Yes, sir.
Another question regarding elementary schools versus the middle school and high school. Is there going to be an opportunity, or can you foresee an opportunity of us opening up our middle schools our elementary before middle school or high school?
Well, so much is going to depend on how the numbers continue to trend. So if we move to purple officially, then there is a waiver process. And school districts could apply to the county and state to waive the tier so that you are able to open as long as you follow the guidelines from the California Department of Public Health. Whether that waiver is granted, of course, has a lot to do with your local data. But there is a process. Again, now you're talking again about time. So if in a couple weeks, 3 weeks, things improve and we don't have a case rate in the 9s, if our positivity rate is not continuing to move upwards, at that point, would we be able to mobilize in time to reopen? Would it be worth it if it ended up being just a couple weeks and then there's Thanksgiving week and the holiday? So I think the uncertainty of that would certainly probably lead to more stress on the part of everyone involved. But obviously, if things got considerably better, if there was a dramatic improvement, I mean, remember, we went from 6.7 to 9.2 in 2 weeks. So could there be a reverse and all of a sudden we're in the orange in a couple weeks? Well, if that happened, then, perhaps people might be open for that, or maybe there'd be ways to increase the number of students who really have exceptional needs, or perhaps needs related to language or other challenges that we might be able to bring back on campus safely. So I don't want to close any doors, Trustee Schwandt, and I appreciate the fact that you're thinking, let's not talk about how we close our schools, let's around how to open them, because that's exactly what the conversation, the narrative needs to be all about. And I hope that I'm able to report when we are back again and we have a meeting on the 22nd that we've improved, that our numbers have improved and we are moving in the right direction, and that Dr. Kaiser and his team and the collective community of Riverside is following his direction and doing the right thing so that we are able to lower those rates and move safely into that orange tier. The orange tier certainly has, over the course of the last few months, up and down the state, has proven to be a safe place to open schools. Many of the districts in those tiers have successfully opened their schools. And even in Orange County, where they're still in the red, but their numbers are low, they're on the low end of it, they've had some success. Yes, they've had cases, but there has not been any community outbreaks. And that's been a story that we've been following very closely, as well as we continue to monitor schools that are in counties that have different case rates. So I'm not a public health officer. I am not a medical doctor. But I recognize that these numbers and all of the input that we are receiving from the experts suggest that we need to move forward with abundance of caution. I know that's an overused phrase now. Everyone's using it. But that's exactly what it is that we need to continue to do. I think we heard loud and clear from our community. We heard loud and clear from our staff. And again, we recognize that there's many of our families that want to come back. And we know everyone wants to come back. And hopefully we're going to have that opportunity soon enough. But just for the record, as of now, the proposal on the table right now and the recommendation is that we continue with our remote distant model as currently being delivered until the end of this semester, which is December 16th. Then we plan to schedule everyone for the second semester over the course of the next couple months, and then return remotely on the 4th, which is our calendar date to return to school, and then identify January 19th, which is a Tuesday after Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, to return for in-person instruction for students in the hybrid model. And of course, that's all assuming the conditions allow us to do that.
All right. With that, is there any other discussion from the Board of Education? All right. So we have a first and we have a second. And so we are going to be voting on the recommendation given by Dr. Muzzarino. So at this time, I'm going to call for a vote. Mr. Schwandt.
Aye.
Mrs. Marino.
Aye.
Ms. Vega. Dr. Dorado.
Aye.
And Mrs. Wilson is an aye. So at this time, that motion has passed, and we thank everybody. Thank you very much, Board. And then, again, I just wanted to, before we adjourn the meeting, I just wanted to thank everybody once again for participating in the thought exchange. Your thoughts and your words really did mean a lot to the Board of Education, and we appreciate them. We read every single one of them. And with that, if you have any questions from the vote this evening, again, we're all available to take any questions that you have. Speak to us, call Dr. Muzzarino. But with that, I am going to adjourn the meeting. And at this time, I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 6:51. And please remember that we have our regular board meeting will be next Thursday at 6 o'clock on October 22nd, 2020. So until then, we thank you so much for joining us in our special board meeting. And remember, we are here for you if you'd like to speak to any one of us anytime. With that, I say good night. Be healthy, be safe, and we'll see you on the 22nd. Take care.